Okay, today is September 24th, 2025. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard. You're watching The Pipeline. I'm joined by my usual crew of good friends here, former Western Standard opinion editor, Nigel Hannaford.
Here again, on time.
Yeah, Western Standard senior Alberta columnist, Cory Morgan.
Always a pleasure.
And Western Standard BC columnist, Alise Mills.
Hi, guys.
Coming to us from Left Coast. Okay, well, there's a common theme today about killing good things. Killing the Notwithstanding clause. Moves by the feds to kill the fight the use of the Notwithstanding clause in Quebec around some of the usual Quebec Frenchy issues. Resistance to using it in Alberta for radical things like keeping boys out of girls' sports. Killing the credibility of the BC Conservative Party, quickly descending into chaos as there are major questions arising about the validity of the leadership review of BC Conservative leader John Rustat as that caucus continues to lose members. It feels daily. It's not daily, but they're just continuing to shed MLAs. So killing the BC Conservative Party slowly. And killing ostriches, BC. BC's twice on the list today. We have the continuing ostrich scenario as the government, there's been a stay of execution by the courts to stop ostrich Waco going down. We're going to talk about that. But we're going to start with killing gun rights. We'll start with Cory here. The Liberal Public Safety Minister's last name I will not even begin to try and pronounce. I know as much about how to pronounce his name as he seems to know about gun rights. He was notoriously slaughtered in the House of Commons in a debate with Andrew Lawton. The guy has no idea on even the most rudimentary of here's his last name.
Ananasan Gary.
Okay, well, they just call him Gun Grab Gary.
Gun Grab
Gary. Let's just go with that rather than massacre the name. The guy knows not even an entry level of information about gun. Like, if this guy tried to write the possession and acquisition license test, they'd laugh him out. Like he'd get almost zero. He'd get 0 out of 10. But then there was a recording of a surreptitious recording of him with, I guess, someone who rents a property from him, who's a gun owner and not too happy. And in short, I think I'm getting this right, Cory. He says, yes, I know it's stupid. None of this is going to work. It's going to be expensive, and it's just going to possibly make crime worse. But we're doing it anyway because Quebec.
Yeah, and you're pretty much paraphrasing it, but that's what it comes down to.
I'm barely paraphrasing.
Yeah. And just the inability to get people to turn these things in. This buyback program, I mean, it's not a feasible firearm.
Buyback always in quotes because the government never had them and they're not buying them.
And they, if you want to go back to that thought that this is all based on trying to win votes in Quebec, unfortunately, it goes all the way back to the terrible massacre of women at the Polytech. And since then, with their failed efforts with the gun registry, they spent billions of dollars when it was supposed to cost millions of dollars. They failed to register most of the firearms in the country. And then it got scrapped by Stephen Harper. But it's like they just will not give up on this hang up. So now it's a case of, well, we're not going to register them. We're just going to incrementally illegalize them. And because Canadians are all such law-abiding citizens, they will just happily come in and turn in their firearms. It's just been a failure right from the beginning. I mean, it's been 5 years since Trudeau illegalized all those different firearms, and they still haven't managed to get any brought in. They've extended the amnesty now to 2026. They just keep kicking that down the road. Mm-hmm. And it's signaling to every firearm owner, to basically never admit that they're a firearm owner and just don't comply. The Liberals will never get it together and come down. But it was a rare moment of honesty from a Liberal minister is the reality. He's up the creek for being honest.
Nigel, I have to give credit where it's due. The minister, Gun Grab Gary, was on CBC Power Politics, and the host of the show, I can't recall his name, he actually did a fairly good interview, I thought, with him, where he read some of his quotes to him and says, "Do you agree with yourself?" And he would read one piece and he'd say, "Oh no, no, I don't really need it," more or less.
Mm-hmm.
"Oh no, I just shouldn't have said that." Why don't you give us maybe some of the greatest hits? You've got Western Standard reporter Jeremy Borg's story here. Why don't you give kind of some of the greatest hits of his candid moments on him admitting how terrible an idea this is?
So here we go with at a press conference on Tuesday. Quebec has been impacted by gun violence, by mass casualty events over a number of decades. So this is a live, real issue for Quebecers. Well, there was that one dreadful one that Cory
Mark the
Yeah, it was a commentary in terms of the ability of police.
Well, he's responding there because in private he says the police are not going to do this. And then he's just saying, well, he's flubbing it off.
So it's this may not be the story you thought it was.
No, I know. We've got a different one up with all his quotes. But yeah, he's just said, I know this is not going to work. The police aren't going to do it. Firearms owners are not going to comply at all. We're not even providing full compensation. I doubt even most gun owners would end it in, even if it was full compensation, because you want your guns. Here he is. Gun grab Gary, in his own words. Yeah, it's...
I don't think this is the CBC one, is it?
No, this is it's the transcript.
Okay, well, here we go.
That's the full... We can't read through the full transcript.
No.
It's fairly long. But it's just... The guy is admitting, we are doing a stupid thing. We know that we are doing a stupid thing. And we're doing this stupid thing because we have too many votes at stake in Quebec. That's it.
So attendant says, I thought it was voluntary. And Gary says, well, it is voluntary. So let me ask you this. If it's a voluntary buyback, some people call it confiscation. Yeah. So I've got a couple of options. My option is to go have it deactivated at my cost. You'll get compensation for that. Okay, so I get compensation for deactivation, but so I basically have a firearm that would never be able to be used again. It's basically an ornament. So give it to you. Well, it's easy. Yeah, I mean, who's collecting? A collection agency as well. What? So anyway, get shot back.
Yeah. So at least this is... I have never seen anything quite like this. I mean, it is kind of a shame nowadays that you're never really private. Someone might be recording you. But his privacy is not my concern here. I mean, I wouldn't like it if someone did it to me. But if I was a minister of the crown in charge of a very important section of public policy, and I was admitting in black and white language at length in several different ways that I know I'm doing a stupid thing that will not work and will probably have negative outcomes, but I'm doing it purely for partisan political reasons, I feel like that might be a moment for a mature, grown-up government, as this is supposed to be, led by Mark Carney, to say, you know what? We're going to take a pause on this. We're going to go back to the drawing board. We'll get back to you later. I feel like that would be an excuse for Carney to back out of this Trudeau-era policy.
Well, there's a couple of things. So first of all, the minister, I've had a problem with this minister from day dot. This minister has attachments to Tamil Tigers, which is a terrorist organization. There has been lots of questions about his, his previous CV. Why he's still there, I don't know what he has on Mark Carney, because I can tell you right now, there are several other better qualified people in that caucus to be a minister of public safety, and yet he hangs on to Gary. Gary has, I would ask our viewers to take a look at the trajectory of Gary's career. This is not somebody that I think the Americans would be particularly impressed to be doing business with, considering he also has the other hot potato file of the what was the border plan under Trudeau, which is now the Carney border plan. But getting back to the origin story of this, so to speak, the minister wasn't there to have this conversation. The minister started this conversation. The person that taped him or recorded him without his permission, which I agree is an absolute violation, was doing so in their mind because they believed they needed to capture what he was saying because it had something to do with a housing issue. I'm not quite sure what that was all about. But then the minister out of nowhere launches into, with no probing or prodding by the other individual in this conversation, goes into the gun buyback program, which tells me that it further encourages me to encourage everyone else to ask why Gary is the Minister of Public Safety. It's not like he's the Minister of women's issues, which we know is a fake ministry, or the Minister
know more about women's issues than guns, though.
Depending on, I speculate on that considering his relationship with the Tamil Tigers, but who has a propensity for violence. But he's definitely not the right person there, and everybody in the press gallery is scratching their head. Why is he still there? It's become a running joke. But I would also say that his the way that he speaks to the issue really demonstrates, I think, what he's hearing in caucus, what he's hearing from even the prime minister. This is all political stagecraft to keep Quebec on side. It's still bloody awful. It's still absolutely wrong, as it was in its first incarnation in 1998 under what was then C-48, the long gun registry, which was an absolute nightmare. But this is just another iteration of this. But I don't think the Liberal caucus or cabinet has their heart in this. And I think his sentiment, or the statements he's making and the comments he's making, and sort of the flagrant sort of informality of how he's talking about this, I think really speaks to that as well. But I it's definitely not sincere. And then you see, Premier Smith come out and direct, law enforcement, do not waste your time picking up people's guns or taking people's guns. And I would also say that Quebec has retorted or responded to this by saying, actually, this gun law or this buyback program has nothing to do with what we actually asked for. And there is one particular semi-automatic weapon on there, and I can't remember. You gentlemen might know it. Yeah, that wasn't even included. So this is all stagecraft.
That's because the SKS, is to be politically correct, but screw it. It's because it's commonly used by Indigenous people for hunting.
Yes.
SKS is I believe it's Czech-made. It's kind of Soviet.
There's Chinese ones too.
There is Chinese ones, yeah.
They're cheap.
But I think it was originally a Chinese-made. To the uninitiated, you look at it, it looks kind of like an AK-47, but it's very much not. It's semi-automatic. It functions pretty much like any other hunting rifle, but it's cheap. The communists couldn't make anything well and cheaply except for small arms.
Yeah, and the nice 7.62 35 ammunition.
Yeah,
it's cheap.
Cheap in the crates.
If I had one, that's what I would buy.
Yeah, if I did, yes. Yeah.
So can we just add that this is. Yeah, and this is another example of two tiers of justice in this country, right? We're going to get into this about the ostrich situation, but First Nations are, even down to sentencing, that stagecraft that's going on, that political maneuvering is breaking this country, right? When Canadians realize that this is all a sham and it's all political theater for Quebec, especially for those in the West who have been asked to put a lot of water in their wine repeatedly, this is just another brick on the pile that's going to break the backs of especially Western Canadians in their trust in their government.
But look, I don't begrudge a politician for doing politics. It's one of the downsides of a democracy is that the objective is to get votes to get in power and keep votes to stay in power. Politicians are going to do politics. But the value proposition of Mark Carney was that he's above politics. He's the grown-up in the room. He's not going to be the pandering amateur hour Justin Trudeau. He is Mark freaking Carney, and he's going to make decisions non-ideologically. Now, if you believe that, I got a gun buyback program for you. But now we've got them bloody admitting it. So okay, he wants to keep his votes in Quebec. But Nigel, wouldn't this would be an opportunity with this, the leak of the recording with the minister here, this would be an opportunity for him to say, you know what? I wasn't all that briefed on this when I became prime minister. I was prime minister for a couple of days, like a week or two. Then we called an election. I signed some fake executive orders, like I was president. It's become apparent this was a bad idea. But do we still believe in getting assault-style guns out of people's hands? We'll get back to you. And this is a way to let it die. They have decided not to do that. They're still going forward here. I think this is going to be... I don't think it's going to hurt the Liberals with Liberal voters. Liberal voters can't tell the difference between a BB gun and a bazooka. And so they see scary guns and they want them gone. I don't think it's going to hurt them with Liberal voters, but I think it will hurt them with some of the moderate conservative voters who were hoping that he was that grown-up in the room, the Mark Carney value proposition.
It would have been pretty easy to do for this, what he did for the EV rule. Just say, we got to think this one through, give us a year, and just get it off the table for now. I do find it surprising that there isn't a stronger hunting lobby in Quebec. I do know that people in Quebec hunt, and that they have firearms in the home for all the same reasons that people in Alberta have firearms in their home. So why this is such a priority for Quebec and for the Bloc Québécois, well, they have their own reasons, I'm sure. But it would have been an easy enough one for Mr. Carney to step back from and just give people more time. Meanwhile, I'm very encouraged to see the response in Ontario, of all the places. I didn't expect. They're not keen on going out and taking guns out of people's houses. Here in Alberta, best place to be in Canada if gun rights are important to you.
Yeah.
I can't see this thing flying nationally because there are too many people in the provinces who are against it. So,
yeah.
But surprised about Quebec.
Speaking of provinces, now let's shift to Alise's area of the woods here. The BC Conservatives, they had a meteoric rise. They came from nothing to something. They swallowed the BC United Liberals whole. It was... I've told friends in BC, because they had a lot of chaos since the election. I told them, you know what? You don't be too worried about it. I'm a veteran. Cory Morgan's a veteran of the Wild Rose PC wars here in Alberta. We think of the Reform PC wars federally. You guys had by far the cleanest conservative civil war, and you settled it before you even getting to an election, more or less. So good on you guys. You'll get through it. It's growing. Your growing pains are a lot less than we've had. But they're not stopping. They seem to be getting worse. They lost a couple of MLAs a number of months ago for comments that John Rustad declared to be, racist or something. And they were not. They were very much not. I thought it was ridiculous putting out Dallas Brody there, and then some others followed her in solidarity. And then they've had this leadership review, and there was definitely some discontent coming through this, but it was a bizarre leadership review. It was not held on a single day the way every other leadership review that I'm aware of in the history of Canada and every political party has been done. It was held over, I think, several months, kind of riding by riding. That doesn't make it necessarily bad, but it's an odd thing to do. I guess it allows the leader to go to the people voting and be there face to face, make a good impression. These things are always stacked in favor of the leader. That's just the way it works. So that's not too untoward, but he apparently passed it, not that strong, with about 70-ish% or the high 60s. And then he immediately kicked someone else out of caucus. Now, not because they were too conservative, but I guess just as we weren't getting along, irreconcilable differences, takes them out of caucus. No vote of the caucus. Again, just unilaterally kicks them out, not as a caucus decision, but as a leader's decision. And then, we've had some reporting, I think it was just yesterday, from the Western Standard's BC Bureau Chief, Jared Yager, with some really interesting information that casts doubts on the fairly low leadership result he got already, below 70%. I'll let you go, Alise, and set it up. There's some pretty serious questions that have now been raised about the validity of even that result.
It was the most strange leadership review I have ever seen, and I have been around politics starting in BC for 25 years. And to have a staggered leadership review without there being a convention at the end of it. You can do the weekend leadership review if you want, but there always should be the convention at the end of it where the results are announced publicly. So I just want to preface this. It has been a clown car of a ride for roughly 4 or 5 months, but it's been chaotic for, I would say, even since last year, even before the election last year. And I think one thing that people across the country need to understand is we didn't have a civil war because the BC Liberals laid down arms. They just walked away. There wasn't even nobody even threw a little pebble that way. Kevin Falcon saw the writing, on the wall, and basically just sort of, once Eleanor Sturco, the MLA that we're talking about today, that was booted from caucus, once she crossed the floor, the die was cast for Kevin Falcon. I will say, let's just talk about Eleanor Sturco. Why she was booted from caucus is from some of the very same tradecraft and trickery that John Rustad himself got up to when I was working with the BC Liberals under Gordon Campbell, and he was an MLA, and he was a minister of, I believe it was Forest. He joined a ragtag group of 15 MLAs, and they quickly formed into an aggressive force that challenged my former boss and my former party in a very aggressive way. Now, when all was said and done, and I would say that Mr. Campbell and his staff around him managed that really well, because Mr. Rustad was folded back into caucus. And I want to remind everybody, if a premier or a leader managed the way that John has, every dissenting voice, you wouldn't have a caucus left. People on the outside don't realize how rough and ready it gets in certain provinces and in certain political parties, and ours was one of them. This is the same situation that's happened in the BC Conservative Party. This also stems from Mr. Rustad not actually taking strong leadership in how he managed his caucus. These issues have been allowed to pile up and pile up and pile up. And it really started with the exodus of Dallas Brody, which you mentioned, Derek. And you're right. The comments, the headline was pretty egregious, but compared to what really happened, she was questioning residential school unmarked graves, which I think we now know a lot of people have questioned. I don't want to tumble into that bee's nest of a policy conversation, but with her, she took three MLAs with her, and she took a chief of staff with her. And then they created their own party, One BC. So now we have two conservative parties on the spectrum here. And the BC United, or BC Liberals turned into BC United, they're still technically a party. Then their party that didn't, or their members that didn't like that Kevin Falcon had sort of folded and allowed not ran any candidates during the October election from last year. Created the Liberal Party of British Columbia, which we fought to get rid of when we changed our name to BC Liberal and then BC United. So it's a real mess. And right now, what's really sad about this is that John Rustad had the advantage. Right after that election, it was a razor edge election. Mr. Eby definitely does not have a secure mandate, and we could go into an election at any time. And quite frankly, we should be going into an election at any time. But the reality is this BC Conservative Caucus has not been ready for a very long time. It's incredibly disappointing. And when he kicked Eleanor Sturco out, who, by the way, former RCMP officer in the battlefields of Surrey, she was tough on crime. She was a force to be reckoned with. And when she crossed over from BC United and basically endorsing the BC Conservatives platform on crime and justice, many people came with her. And it bridged the gap between the ardent social conservatives of the BC Conservative Party that for the last 9 years, haven't been able to get out of their own way and make any advances with the voters here in British Columbia. It bridged the gap between the ardent social conservatives, the sort of social conservatives and fiscal conservatives, and then just the fiscal conservatives and what I would call the blue liberals. I wasn't necessarily totally pleased by bringing more blue liberals over because I thought we got rid of them with the BC United, but I understood that this is British Columbia and we need to have a larger tent than maybe what they wanted. she brought all of that, and she brought credibility. She was the strongest performer in the caucus. There's two other strong performers in the caucus that I can immediately name, Judy Tour, and I said I was going to immediately name them, and I forgot the other person's name. But they are strangely quiet. And what I understood from somebody that was close to what happened in the caucus room on Monday is it wasn't just one person that was descending from John Rustad's leadership or questioning it. There were many, many, many MLAs that were yelling out about how we don't cancel our MLAs. We're not in the business of cancel culture. They had put up with it with Dallas Brody, but they weren't going to put up with it with Eleanor Sturko. And by the way, those were the socially ardent conservatives, or the ardently social conservatives, that were defending the somewhat liberal Eleanor Sturko. So right now, John Rustad is an anointed leader. He's not an elected leader. It is time for a leadership race. The fraudulent 2,100-ish votes that ended up being fraudulent for this leadership race demonstrate that there's a significant problem. They all came from one area, and there were 2 IP addresses that were attached to those. There were 3 credit cards that were used. But the problem is now, Derek, and the rest of you, that we don't know who, if votes got through before we canceled their memberships, all of the above. The whole thing's a mess. We look stupid. We look like we can't get it together. So now it's time for a leadership race. And if Mr. Rustad wants to run again, then he has that opportunity. But we need a leadership race.
So, Cory, I mean, it's the unofficial bar for staying in the leadership is pretty much barely what John Rustad got. It was kind of unofficially set at, 66 or 68 by Joe Clark in the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah, early 80s. He didn't make it, and Cass very honorably stepped down from the leadership and then ran in that leadership again, which he lost to Brian Mulrooney. And ever since then, that's kind of been the bar at, you can't hit above 2/3 of your, because this is your own members. This is not, and when you're the leader, you have incredible powers of incumbency. It's a captive audience. They vote right after you talk, and everyone's there. Leader. It's extremely rare that leaders outright lose. Jason Kenney would have got, I think he got 51%. He would have gotten well below that if they hadn't have rigged that one repeatedly. Thomas Mulcair got below 50%. And then John Diefenbaker, for who was created. That's the reason we have leadership views now. It was already pretty razor thin at the edge of what's considered an acceptable amount to stay on. I've got no bone to pick with John Rustad. I tend to like the guy, but he has got a very tenuous grasp on his caucus. It seems right now. It seems people are being kicked out for what do not appear to be valid reasons. Maybe I'm projecting a bit, but he's just pushing out anyone who seems to have a different opinion on issues. He barely passed an acceptable level of the race, even if those numbers were valid. There's now quite sufficient evidence that this was not a legitimate vote. There were a very significant number of eligible voters, and therefore very likely ballots cast in this leadership that were fraudulent.
Derek, it's important to note that Elections BC is going to begin it's very, very, I mean, we're all expecting it. It's going to begin an investigation because they've broken Section 2 of the Elections Act here. So this is not just a political issue. This is what Eleanor Sturko, as a former RCMP member who's Miss Justice, Law and Order, which is why we wanted her in the BC they wanted her in the BC Conservatives. The reality is this breaks the law if proven true. And it's a death knell for John Rustad's leadership, and it's not the only thing there. No leader goes down on one issue. They go down by 1,000 cuts, and there's been 1,001. So I just wanted to point it out. It's not just a political issue. It's now could be a legal issue.
Yeah. It could now be legal. But I mean, yeah, it's as Alise said, it's a piling up of issues. There's been a lot of issues here. Can he stay on without holding another race at this point? Or at a minimum, do they have to do the leadership review again?
I don't know. I mean, even let's just assume that it was valid, that's a tepid endorsement for a man who hasn't been leading very long and long after an election. I mean, we've seen cases where there was an attempt to take a run at Danielle Smith at the last AGM, and she surpassed 90%.
Oh, she got like high 90s.
Yeah, and then
Like
Klein, before his decline, was Ralph Klein used to win those with 80, 90% way up there. A strong leader should be up there. And the 70 that's your warning shot. You're clinging for your life. You've got to do something dramatic because that's going to fester. That's going to get worse. And I don't know, by firing a caucus member the day after is the dramatic move you want to be doing. So he's got a hornet's nest on his hands, and he has to make some sort of large pivot. I don't know what that pivot is, but he's in dire, dire trouble.
I would say the pivot is that they have to, what he is lacking, mean no offense to the incumbent of the present office, where there isn't a chief of staff running everything that happens behind the background. Behind the facade, if you don't have a strong party apparatus, which manifestly he doesn't, then these things will happen. And it's not surprising. It all came together at the last minute. Well, figuratively speaking, what are they, 18 months old now? There's a sudden desperate rejection of the NDP and all the NDP stood for.
They are.
But
they are decade plus old. I mean, they've been around since I was.
That's the ancient history, but in terms of being an electoral
Technically,
force,
they go back to like Wacky Bennett and stuff.
Yeah.
Or RB.
Well, and you should also. I think the viewers would be interested to know one of the greatest problems that I myself have had, but so many others that are more deeply involved have had, is how many NDPers and former NDP chiefs of staff and organizers this guy's hired on his staff. That to me spoke volumes. And I mean, these are people that I literally had very aggressive arguments with when I was a pundit and spokesperson with the BC Liberals. These are people that attacked me during the 2011 and 2015 federal Conservative campaigns, and he brought them on. And then there was this mea culpa. They wrote these letters. They reached out to some of us. We're so sorry for our sins. That has left a terrible taste in the mouth of many, many Conservatives. So yeah, there's that as well.
We got a fair bit in today, so we have to wrap it there. But I'll just leave with this: if you're watching John Rustad, you gotta tighten your shit up. You gotta bring back all the MLAs who have been kicked out or have followed others in solidarity for getting kicked out. You've got to rebuild the party apparatus. And at a minimum, you got to redo this leadership review. I like you. I want you to succeed. But this is not going to succeed. You got to tighten this shit up. All right. Speaking of madness in BC, let's turn to something I can't call it later. Somehow, in a very dark and twisted way, funnier-ish. I don't know.
It's bizarre.
The ostrich farm owners probably don't consider it funny, but it's just kind of funny in that it's become an international story. The ostrich crisis. Yes, I've got many more puns and attempts at being funny about this coming your way. I've also called it Ostrich Waco. Someone in our newsroom called it Ostrich Ridge, alluding to Ruby Ridge. So, very long story short, concerns about avian flu and whatnot, but none of the existing birds have any traces of it that we know of. And the government is hell-bent on massacring these poor, noble birds. But the owners are not putting their head in the sand. They're fighting on. I could keep going. I see that. Yeah, I got more. I'm here. They're fighting on. The cops showed up yesterday with a warrant to take the birds away. The owners of the birds and the farm did not comply. They were arrested, taken away from their beautiful birds, and I guess the RC. Actually, maybe it was I think it was the RCs, but yeah, there was cops there with the wildlife guys. Set up barriers so that the news cameras couldn't get any footage of them murdering the birds. And then I got to give hats off to a friendly competitor here. Rebel News rented a friggin' helicopter. started circling above. Let's make sure we got some footage playing on the side here. Rebel News rented a frickin' helicopter. I think it would have been cheaper to get a drone, but anyway, they got a helicopter, made it more funny. And go overhead. And just before the axe comes down to murder these birds, they get a court injunction, putting a stay of execution, maybe you'd call it. So the birds are alive right now, but they're still slotted to be killed. I don't know who wants to pick up this one. This is
Well, as a sort of an animal lover and a sentimentalist, of course, I'm delighted that the birds are going to make it. This has got all the makings of a Disney movie one day, or at least it would have in days when Disney wasn't so crazy. But at any rate, this is a happy story because people are rallying to the defense of the defenseless birds. I feel a little sorry for the police. I don't think this is a job that makes them look good, and they're probably a very,
they don't want to do this.
They don't want to be doing this. But there's one small thing that takes the thrill out of it for me, and that is that the stay of execution was based on an argument that this farm is on native land, therefore the native band
isn't being consulted.
Basically we're not in favor.
That's the grounds for not murdering the birds?
Yeah, like as if Indians wouldn't eat ostriches if they ever had them. But
wasn't there a long-standing ostrich hunting tribe out there in interior BC? I don't know.
Was there?
I don't think so.
I think that's fake news, Cory.
Yeah,
I think that's fake news.
You know what I think it was? I think what it is up in northeastern BC. You'll recognize it. It's got a real Albertan feel to it. Freedom and liberty and all the above. And out there are many First Nations that, like the gun buyback program, will oppose what was happening with the ostriches. And I think what they did was they, rightfully so, laid down their ancestral rights as a way of just blocking it. I don't think this was meant to be. So I understand your concern, Nigel. A lot of people have remarked upon that. But this, I think, was friendly fire in the sense of, okay, well, then we're going to use our title, right? And because it had turned into a nutcase situation.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, if our Canadian Border Services operated like, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, we would know where those 178 very dangerous illegal aliens are residing in this country. I commend our competitor Rebel, because what began to happen was there was these clandestine movements by the Food Inspection Agency, and it had nothing to do with the RCMP. They were acting like they were on the hunt for bin Laden, and they actually cut the power to the ranch, right? So you're watching this in real time. I think our reporters covered it. Many others covered it too. And it reminded me of that bin Laden video that you saw where it's dark and the seals come out. That was what was happening. So it's a total embarrassment. I'm embarrassed. Yeah. I'm really embarrassed as a Canadian.
I was kind of, shit posting last night when I said it was Ostrich Waco. And then video play. Let's put the video up of someone alleged it was fire, that there was fire going on in the ostrich farm. And I thought, oh my God, the FBI and ATF are using CS gas. They're going to cover it up by murdering everybody. Now, I did comment on that video because I couldn't verify it was the farm. It has since been verified. Yeah, there was, I guess, a fire at the farm.
Yeah.
I don't know how the hell that happened, but as far as I know, no, they did not use CS gas and murder all of the...
bring some barbecue sauce and make the most.
Yeah.
Oh, and just fact-checking you, I think ostriches are indigenous to Australia.
Yes. So no, but just a side note for where I was going with that, there was a case in interior BC where a First Nations band won by claiming that this valley is an area where they had been hunting and managing wild horses for hundreds and hundreds of years. But the horses aren't indigenous either. No. Because indigenous science is to be considered unquestioning, the judge still ruled in their favor and said, well, if they said so, then I guess screw the lack of...
Well, so me and my ancestors have been hunting ostriches at Rocky View County for 500 years.
So they could claim to be ostrich hunters and might have a case to be made.
But the end of the story is that the taxpayers are now footing the bill for the health and the food and the care of these ostriches, as our former agriculture minister, Jerry Ritz, pointed out on Twitter today. Now it's all up to the state to take care of them because they're literally in a holding pattern or a holding pen right now. Nobody has, it's my understanding or Jerry's understanding, no, the original owners or the true owners they have no interaction with these ostriches. So it's back to the taxpayers it goes, as per usual in Canada. But I will say this, if my suspicion is correct and the First Nations there did this just to push back, this is where we can come together. I like that. It's kind of a nice part to the story. The Bin Laden heel search was good
Real
too.
reconciliation looks like.
So, we're using it for good. And I'll just say this. We've been harping on the government for murdering these poor birds, but there is a place for culling. Avian flu is very serious. It can sweep through a flock and get beyond that flock and damage other flocks at other farms. There is a place for state intervention in culling animals sometimes. It would appear, though, that this is overzealous, that they have gone to significant lengths to prove that there is no avian flu in the remaining birds. Some did die from it. Some died, and they're not sure what from. But I mean, so what I'm not saying that there is never a time to kill the ostriches. I'm just saying this was probably not it, and the government's making an ass of itself.
And I also think we're missing a huge opportunity to test how they got such a strong herd immunity. But I think that the government is hell bent on this. I think they're probably going to try and test them for COVID next. I'm not so sure. They'll come up with some sort of animal COVID. But I agree with you, Derek. The one thing we need to remember is look what happened in the UK with the cows. Look what you have to take this very seriously. But I think they've proven time and time again in this case that there is a strong herd immunity. And the problem is the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is using the comparables or the analysis from chickens on avian flu. This is a completely different species. And they have been able to demonstrate that. So it'll be interesting to see what their legal appeal or their court case looks like. And I'm sure they're going to have lots of lawyers volunteering to join to support them.
Herd immunity is just a myth invented by anti-vaxxers to not do their duty for society.
It's so interesting.
we don't have time for our last segment because we've had to fit the hostage crisis in. So we're just going to go. We're going to go with a parting shot. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make that last fourth segment my parting shot on the notwithstanding clause. You've got the NDP here in Alberta fighting against using the notwithstanding clause, which appears to be the Alberta government's intention here to pass what they call anti-trans legislation, which is things like keeping boys out of girls' sports and, making sure schools don't change the pronouns of young children without parental knowledge or consent, that kind of thing. They're fighting against the right to use the notwithstanding clause there. And then in Quebec government, I don't know all the details of their bill, but it's another one of these Quebec identity bills. Quebec being Quebec, doing Quebec stuff. And in it, they're using the notwithstanding clause, which they've done many times in the past. And the federal government is fighting them in court for their ability to use it. The notwithstanding clause could be used for illegitimate purposes. If I was an Anglophone living in Quebec, I would not like its use. But that is not how the notwithstanding clause is written. It doesn't say if you agree with using it or not with using it. It is a part of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It was put forward by Alberta's Peter Lougheed. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms would not have been passed and come into existence without the notwithstanding clause in it, because it was meant to prevent the hyper-presidentialization and written constitutionalization of or Americanization, if you will, of our Constitution, intruding on our Westminster traditions. It's perfect. It's a perfectly legitimate tool to be used, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bad. That'll depend on your reasons. But the Liberals are trying to get the courts here to unilaterally rewrite the Constitution itself. It's one thing, and probably not good, but it's one thing when the courts rewrite legislation. It's something else entirely when they rewrite the Constitution itself. That invalidates the Constitution if the judges get to write it.
Couldn't agree more. Excellent.
No.
So I'm just, doing the headline scan for this program today. So I see two things. On the one hand, Carney recognizes Palestine. That is going to make it harder to deal with the United States because the United States is not recognizing Palestine, nor should they, and nor should we. But it is going to make the trade. It's like poking your finger in Trump's eye, and it's just, why would you do that? He did it, even though neither of the two conditions that he announced a month ago have been met. Hamas is not disarming, and there's no commitment to a two-state solution on the other side. So anyway, there's your one headline. Then on the other, this is the National Post, I'm sorry, but Carney touts trade possibilities with China, aims to meet with Xi. You get it? Screw the U.S. We're going to work with China. And this is what Canada's future looks like with Mr. Carney. Not a good thing.
Corey.
Well, BC NDP Finance Minister Brenda Blair went to Boston and blew over $6,000 riding around in a limousine. This is a pure socialist and socialist action, telling everyone to tighten their belts for the sake of the collective whilst riding in luxury. These are the gems that Rustad's missing out on while he's busy fighting with his own party.
Limousine liberals.
Yes.
Limousine, Marxist millionaires. There we go.
Campaign socialists.
Well, I hope that wasn't. It was a BC one, so I hope Corey can steal that from you.
No, I saw that. Well done on you, Corey, because that was, I'm from BC. I know this NDP. It was not a surprise to me. Has anyone heard of Uber Black? I mean, 6,000 on a limo. Champagne socialists. So my...
one day.
Oh, one show we'll have to talk about how my gender seems to be scandal ridden the moment they get into the Governor General's residence. We haven't had three in a row.
We're over time.
My parting shot, it bleeds out from what Corey just said. It's time for John Rustad to call a leadership race. BC is in serious financial, economic, and social trouble, and we are not going to be able to get to where we need to get to with the NDP. EB's leadership is very shaky. His own caucus is looking at him, questioning whether they want to go with him, they want to go any further. We need a conservative leadership race in British Columbia.
All right, there we go. Alise, Corey, Nigel, thank you very much. John,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Alise?
and thanks all of you for joining us today on The Pipeline. Remember, if you're not a member of the Western Standard, you're a cheap bastard. You need to pony up. Do your point independent media. Go to westernstandard.news, click on subscribe. $10 a month or $100 a year to support the Western Standard and stop being a cheap bastard. Thank you very much for joining us today. God bless.